lots of great things continue to come out of these conversations. So just always remember that. Today's conversation is going to be a really impactful one, and one that is so important to our mission at the collaborative, and one that we know is important to all of us and why we come together in the work that we do. And that is a conversation that we're going to hold regularly on Fridays, and it's going to be led by our school outreach manager, who also helps coordinate our Any Given Child, our Any Given Child Equity Committee, who also has been part of creating our diversity, equity, inclusion statement, which we call a promise document. And it's work that we know we need to continue to do now more than ever. All of you know who I'm talking about. That's Clarissa. Clarissa is going to lead our conversation today around equity. Let's give Clarissa a round of applause as she starts us off on this very important topic. Thanks, Clarissa.
Thanks, Lissa, and thanks for your virtual round of applause. What a time we're in. Yeah, so I wanted to just take this time to sort of give a recap of what the Equity Committee has been working on these past couple of months, and how now more than ever, we're really shifting our work and seeing that equity, again, is really at the forefront of our work at the collaborative and as an arts community. So I think it was in February, which seems like forever ago, but in February we spoke at the Any Given Child National Exchange, and it was a time for all the AGC communities to come together and just sort of learn from each other and talk about what they were doing and the different challenges and needs that each community has, because they're all so different. And something that really set us apart from the other communities was we're, I believe, the only community that actually has a written diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And so our session was about the creation of the statement and how it really came to be. And really, the conversation about equity was something that was had even in the early stages of building Any Given Child DC. And we think, you know, a good portion of that is because with the collaborative and our mission of equity really being at the heart of what we do. And we feel fortunate that the DC community, the AGC DC community, was able to build equity into this conversation and into this collective impact work from the start. So I think that was really something that makes us stand out from the other communities, and we really are a leader in that way for the other AGC DC, the other AGC communities and the other arts communities in general. During that conversation, we talked about the forming of the equity statement and our processes and how that came to be. And we also talked about some of the equity issues that impact DC. A lot of us were talking about the issues of race and socioeconomic class. And we also talked about biases within our own communities, maybe the ways that you know, we might have these internalized biases that we might not even recognize, but how is that going to impact, you know, your customers or your patrons who come in for the first time to a space and maybe they don't feel like they belong there because of an internal bias that you might not even be aware of. So that was a really insightful conversation that we had. And I think something that also came out of this conversation, you know, we received a question from someone about how we engage parents and students on a deeper level. And it's something that we've acknowledged that it really wasn't built into our model from the beginning. I think reaching the parents and students has always sort of been kind of like the last hurdle in a way that we're trying to figure out how to get over, how to actually, you know, reach these students, how to actually talk to the parents and maybe see if there's an impact that the parents can see at home from these field trip opportunities. And so we do have a parent-student advisory committee, and we hope to, you know, have more impact with those groups of people, because ultimately the parents and the students are the most important voices in this conversation, but they are the ones that are missing. So we were, you know, able to acknowledge that. And again, this whole process is ever evolving and ever growing. And I think that's so important to remember. is that we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the voices at the table. And so we're constantly in this work. We have to reshift, we have to pivot, and we have to analyze, who are we missing and how can we get them involved? And so in our equity committee meeting, which I think was earlier in March, which again feels like an eternity, we focused on the operationalizing of the mission. I think a lot of times with this collective impact work, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of, talk about, the mission itself. But I think sometimes, we really need to drill down into how are we actually going to do this? So really trying to focus on, well, how are we actually going to make the arts community accessible and equitable to all these different groups of people in the district? And something we really talked about a lot was this term equity statement, which I think it's safe to say as a committee, we feel really unsatisfied with. The contents of the statement itself, we think are great for the time being, but just the term statement seems so finalized. It seems like, we've done what we're going to do and this is it. But really the process again is ever growing as we continue to learn more from our community, as we continue to see, if there's specific groups that are not at the table, that are being left out, this is work that we constantly have to reflect on. So we were trying to figure out, maybe what are different words or different phrases that we can use to describe this process. We talked about equity practice. We talked about maybe saying equity commitment, equity promise. And so these are all things that we've kind of been throwing around, but if anyone has, maybe an idea for a better word that would sort of reflect the fact that this is not a finalized process, feel free to shout it out in the chat. We're definitely open to any suggestions and thoughts. As well, we talked about learning how to partner more with community-based organizations. We realized that there are a lot of communities in DC that maybe we're not actually serving the most. We talked about how in the Columbia Heights area, there's a very large Spanish speaking population. There are ways that we can, partner with some of those community-based organizations to get voices from the Latino community, partnering with groups in Ward 7 and Ward 8. So that's something we're also going to try and figure out how to do, is really engaging all these sort of community organizations, whether they're arts related or not, as long as they have an authentic and deep connection with these communities, they might be able to bring elements to the table that we just aren't aware of because we're not really working with those communities as closely. So I wanted to transition into talking about equity in this current space that we're living in, with distance learning and having to shift so quickly. And I think everyone is really in this space where they're building the plane while it's in the air. We're really trying to figure out how we can serve students with arts and humanities opportunities while they're learning at home. So Trey, who is on the call, built the distance learning database, which Lissa has talked about. And I can link that in the chat in case people haven't seen it. But as Lissa said, we have about 100 responses or 100 different resources from our community, which is amazing. And it's sorted by discipline and age group. And we've received a lot of traffic on the website. So it's very exciting to see that parents and teachers are starting to really utilize this database. And again, feel free, anyone, if you have parents that you have a deep connection with, or other people in your community, other arts education, people that definitely feel free to share this link. We've even gotten views internationally from a variety of different countries. So there is a large impact for this work. So definitely, please feel free to continue sharing it out. I put out a distance needs learning assessment for teachers, because we really wanted to figure out what resources do teachers need the most in this time. And I would say overwhelmingly the majority of teachers requested resources for special education classes. I think that is the area that, as a whole, as a community, and not even just in the arts, but within this distance learning space, needs or resources for special education classes continue to be a little bit tricky, because special education is so broad. There's so many different kinds of needs and abilities out there. It can be really difficult to just lump all these resources into one category. But then, the distance learning platform might not be the best for every student, especially students that do have needs. So a lot of our teachers really wanted to figure out how can they best engage their special education students in this time. As well, we realized that teachers are also requesting live learning, so like digital, I guess, like recorded lessons, and also like online study guides and lesson plans is something that is very highly requested. And interestingly enough, PD, professional development, was the least requested resource from our assessment, which I think just goes to show that teachers really, they are trying to focus their attention as much on the students as possible. And their PD is kind of on the back burner at this point. But I think that's something that's helpful to keep in mind as we put together some resources.
It looks like she might have froze a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're frozen if you can hear Clarissa. Well, while Clarissa recalibrates, I just have to say this has been, I hope you found what Clarissa has shared so far really informative. We've done a lot. We care a lot about our diversity, equity, inclusion work. We always have as an organization. And thanks to Clarissa's leadership, we're really seeing this through, connecting any given child work to our current work, especially with that immediate needs assessment that she put out to all of the schools. Clarissa, are you back on? Looks like she's still maybe frozen. Okay, she's probably gonna recalibrate. Anyone have any thoughts, something they might want to share before Clarissa gets back on?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I missed, I think, did she read anything before that she was talking about in terms of what equity means? Did she read anything, or she was just talking about it? Because I think I missed it. So if I can.
At the beginning, oh, go ahead, Tracey.
Sorry, she was just talking about it, but I can put the link to our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement and our committee
statement. Yeah, that was the word I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Couldn't find it.
And, yeah, our and Clarissa has said this when she's been talking too, but diversity, equity, and inclusion are all like 3 separate things, and we took the time in crafting the statement to define each of them. So I can put that in there for you to look at. I think Clarissa is back now, so I'll turn it over.
Sorry, internet problems. What was the last thing you guys heard me saying? I didn't realize I was frozen until much later. So, Lissa or Tracey, I don't know where.
You left off about how PD was one of the least requested resources, I think is
right.
The last place.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, so I guess to summarize, finding resources for students with special needs and coming up with live learning, like online recorded lessons and study guides is something that is a really high priority. And I think the last thing I wanted to share out before opening the floor was, just sort of addressing these equity gaps as we're in this distance learning space, and acknowledging that, not every student, and many of our students probably don't have access to computers at home. Might not have internet connections. They might have, you know, reliable internet. They might not have
Clarissa,
smartphones
can you hear
or
us?
printers.
Yeah.
Acknowledge this, and how can we come up with resources, you know, serve. Sorry, the internet here is not great. So,
ironically,
but yeah,
talking
anyways,
about
I'm
internet.
just trying to figure out. I know I'm talking about internet unreliability, and here I am. So yeah, just addressing that. There's so many different equity gaps, and you know, we don't want this to become a time where the students who are in marginalized situations or low income, low socioeconomic statuses, we don't want them to be pushed even and more over to the margins. So trying to be cognizant of that and being creative. And I think the last thing that I've heard is just teachers who are parents are feeling really overwhelmed. How do they balance a workload of teaching their class remotely while they're also teaching their own children at home? So I think that's also something that is sort of an equity issue, and we need to think about, you know, for the teachers who are parents, you know, how can we best help them, and what are resources for them? What are even ways of self-care? I think just trying to figure out how we can serve the community as a whole. So I guess I just wanted to open up the floor to anyone who has, you know, heard any concerns from educators or has concerns themselves. Maybe you're in a similar situation. I wanted to open up the floor as to what you guys are hearing, or if you have any resources to share out.
Clarissa? Oh. Am I speaking? Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. Yes? Okay. Yes. I would say that the across the board, the inequality in terms of equipment, in terms to deliver the same material. So that alone establishes a huge gap, just the equipment that parents do have. And then the parents themselves, as we know, and at the beginning, I think I heard you saying the parents' voice is one voice, one of the voices that it's missing at the table to really talk about all of those issues. And I think there is a cultural piece that we also need to add here. The difference culturally of all the communities in DC. It's just so hard to bring everybody to the same level of understanding of how they can take advantage of the system and how they can be totally integrated into the system and work to the benefit of their children and in education. So I find it's not only the Hispanic community that you had mentioned, also in the Adams Morgan area. And of course, we have a very large Hispanic community here, but even within the Hispanic community, there are many layers. So you have, we tended to group everybody, but the cultural differences here play a huge role in true equity, I think, in how we understand. And the other thing, I think that we still have not learned how to truly, sincerely, authentically, to use a word that you've used before, look from an asset viewpoint. We constantly look from a deficit. So I think that we also need to take a step back and see what are we missing that people already have in terms of resource. But because we have a narrow angle to look from, because it's based on our very own experience, we are missing out on a whole lot of things. And we are thinking of providing maybe not the exact need, just because there is a miscommunication, misinterpretation there. And I would say there are some other larger communities in the area with other language and cultural backgrounds also. For, you know, Amharic, you have Eritrea, and you have Ethiopia, and you have some other communities also. I see there is a large, not a large, but a growing Asian community, you know, Vietnamese and Thai, and you also, I don't want to bunch them all up, but you do have your Korean track and your Chinese track, and especially because DCPS now and all the schools are offering so much dual language in Chinese, and it's attracting more people into the city. So I think that there is a lot in this cultural map that we don't have data to truly even redefine this statement or just fine tune it.
Yes.
I
Oh,
can,
thank
I
you.
can,
Yeah.
oh, I can hear.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's so true. We know, and that's why we really don't like that term statement. It's so static, and we know it's not. We know that it's so, there's so much more we as a community need to recognize and own and understand, that we have to bring in so many more stakeholders into this conversation, as Clarissa was sharing. That's just so important. And also thank you for bringing up all of the layers, because it's not just, we can't just compartmentalize, Hispanic community, Latinx community, socioeconomic, you know, it's more, it's so layered and it's very complex, and we need to have those various stakeholders in the conversation. And we know that, and we recognize it. Also, when we talk about, Clarissa was talking a lot about students of all learning abilities. This is another very important piece of our equity puzzle that we have to work on together as a community. And that's quite significant. And there's a lot of learning that we need to share with each other for that too. Right now, in this moment of pivoting and immediate responsiveness to the needs of our community, doing our best, not letting perfection get in the way of progress. We've been hearing this for the last week and a half. You know, we're really proud of that distance learning database that we've created. We know there are some downloadable materials. We know that there are issues of equity around it. We know that's what we work on now together. Maybe Danelle, I know that you're on the line. Do you want to share as an example some of the real responsive immediate needs that you have been addressing with your kiddos?
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, everyone. My name is Donnell from Life Pieces to Masterpieces. Yeah, so it's just we're doing day-to-day tasks. So our demographic is like boys ages 3 to 21, 3 to 25 actually. And then for the households who, like the kids, their parents actually have to like work, like still go out and like work, I guess, to survive. Some of the kids are like home by themselves with just their siblings. And so they're left without like certain like basic things. As I stated before, so like water, basic household tools, products, either they can't afford or either they're not able to get because their parents are out just working. Can you hear me or no? I'm on. Yeah, no. So yeah, so we're actually doing it right now. We're in Virginia, picking up water, and as well as we're making masks too as well. So yeah, we're still collecting things, but yeah, we actually drive out in our van. We have a separate like task force team that actually like drive out and do like the delivery for certain things. We have our staff that stand home doing like all the computer work, but then we have a team as well that's just doing like drop off and like tasks like that. So delivering water, paper towel, like just household stuff, general stuff. On top of like our daily like little FaceTimes with our children as well, for like homework and like stuff like that. So it's a lot. It's a lot. We divide our team into like 4 different groups. So some for like actually daily tasks, and then some for FaceTime and homework, and then some for like administrative stuff.
Can you talk about Life Pieces to Masterpieces mission for those who might not know you guys on the call?
You said our mission?
Yeah, and your program.
Oh yeah, so just basically, so we started out in Ward 7, and just our mission is so first, we're an art and mentoring program, and so we focus on arts in every variation, but also infrastructure. So yeah, we just started from ages 3 to 25 basically. So everything. So initially art program, but however, we do care about character and infrastructure first, as opposed to arts. Like we do care about like the whole development of like kids growing up in Ward 7 in general. And Black boys brown boys, so Black and Latino boys we have at our location. But yeah, that's just our demographic. That's what we aim towards. So it's an art program first, but also just to change the infrastructure, the lives, the thoughts, the challenges that people face in Ward 7 in general, but also our boys and their families. Yeah, but we do art, so it's an art program. But like I said, we do want to stress the whole, we care about like a person's being and like how they grew up, developing certain traits and characteristics as opposed to just art, even though we are an art program.
Awesome.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's really great just to hear about how you're helping them on a holistic effort. Obviously the arts is important, but it sounds like that community that you're talking about is really has other immediate needs as well. So thank you for sharing what you're doing right now to help them.
No problem.
And I think that brings up a really good point because I think it brings up a good point because I think, you know, most of us are in the kind of space where we can work from home, but you know, not everyone can do that. People that work retail jobs, people that work in grocery stores, people that work customer service and construction, they don't have the luxury of being able to work from home. So I think that's a really important piece to remember is that while there are a lot of parents right now who are, you know, homeschooling essentially their own children, there's a lot of parents who still have to go to work. And you brought up a really good point that the responsibility of teaching the students might fall on the older sibling who's the only person that's home. So I think that's also something that's really important to remember as we navigate this conversation, because assuming that everyone has the luxury to work from home is, you know, I think Elizabeth, did you have a question? Am I correct?
Yeah, hi. I am a teacher programs coordinator at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. And we've been trying to figure out how to address some of this by way of printed materials. And we're putting together what will ultimately be like an 8-page workbook and 5 full color art reproductions that will be packaged. And what we're trying to figure out is good ways to get those into the hands of DCPS students. Previously, we were able to deliver some art supplies to mill distribution sites. And I'm just wondering if that is a good strategy, if there are other ways to get these materials out. And then also just like more broadly, the Smithsonian is also trying to figure out how do we not contribute to the digital divide? How do we make materials available physically to people nationwide? So I would love to know if you guys can think of any networks that are kind of scalable that we at SAM could work with DC based, but then I could recommend also to the Smithsonian more generally so we could go further. So that's a very complex way of stating, I'm sure, a very basic question, but any ideas are welcome.
Hi, so I'll jump in. So we actually had a question from an art teacher who talked about the possibility of maybe hosting like some kind of arts material drive because not every student is going to have crayons and construction paper. And I think we posed this question with DCPS as to how to actually make that happen. We talked about possibly contacting the meal distribution sites. Lissa or Tracey, I'm not sure if you had heard follow-up about like the next steps and what that could look like.
Not yet. No, not yet. But that is a next logical step. At least the first weekend, they were not, because it was spring break. Remember, they accelerated spring break first. First weekend, they weren't getting a lot of traffic at those sites, but they fully anticipate that that will ramp up. So they were focusing on other agendas, but we are still very interested in that, and we can certainly bring that back to our contacts that we do meet with regularly. And we can also bring it up on the town hall conversation that will be on Monday with Mary from DCPS Arts and David Markey. But that physical material distribution is so important, and really appreciate what Donnell, there he is, he's on the phone, what he is doing as a community-based arts organization, that necessary immediate pivot of real need and also helping to narrow that divide. I think some other ideas to consider, Sylvia mentioned clinics. I think that's a very interesting approach too. We have to think about public safety for all of us and getting these resources out there as well. I mean, it's just so complicated, but we know that we have to do this. DC Libraries is another great resource. We do have a contact that didn't join us today for our community check-in conversation before this meeting, but we can reach out again to DC Libraries, ask them what they're working on. Maybe there's a distribution hub where you can get materials through them. I think we're going to continue to need to rely upon DC Libraries moving forward in the future more than ever as community center hubs. Another thought, which is a real random one, but it is physical material, but not your materials. You'd have to reconstruct them, but reaching out to our local community-based papers, because at this point, I believe they are still publishing, whether it's the Courier or others. There aren't many, as we know, because that industry has been decimated, but there's still some community-based publications. And then lastly, we don't have our friend Uncle Devin on the line. There's radio. It's not physical product, but it's another way to get the message out, especially low power FM community radio like PFW. Just wanted to throw all those ideas out for a very long answer to no, we didn't hear back from DCPS yet, but we will work on it.
Yeah, and I think we're hearing some great suggestions, Sylvia, mentioning clinics, and then someone else mentioning laundromats, previously hosting DC Libraries events, which I didn't know. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any other sort of ideas about maybe alternate ways that we can still reach, you know, our students and parents, and maybe trying to figure out how to work with some of these essential businesses like a laundromat, and maybe the library, connecting to the libraries would be the next step. I think in general, connecting with the libraries and having a partnership with them is going to be really necessary, especially as, you know, hopefully whenever this situation is over, but who knows what the future will look like, you know, maybe just really leaning on those libraries as ways to host us and gain access to the communities, since there's libraries in every ward of the city, and libraries do so much to support the community for free. And just having looked at the library, DC Libraries website, there's a lot of artistic resources that they offer online for free as well. So I can share that link out as well. But I think definitely trying to figure out a way to really partner with the library system in this time is going to be really necessary, since a lot of the work they do is reaching, you know, people of all socioeconomic statuses and communities.
I think libraries are once again going to be repurposed, reinvented, or going back to their roots as true community hubs and centers now more than ever, for sure. So I absolutely agree. Another thought is partnering with not just the DCPS food distribution centers, that's a direct connect to student engagement, but also to any of the food distribution organizations. Maybe it's time for us to be thinking collaboratively with Martha's Table and others that are getting food, much needed materials, life-sustaining materials out to community. I think that's another way for us to look at partnering with other community-based organizations, similar to how Donnell has pivoted his work at Life Pieces to Masterpieces. If some of us can't do that immediate pivot, probably because we're not community-based that way, we can partner with community-based orgs that are doing that work.
Sylvia, could you speak a little more about your idea regarding engaging Amazon?
Look, they have a big stake in interest over here. They are just going to open one of their warehouses over here and changed the entire community. And there was just so much critique. They were already having such a gigantic tax break, tax incentive. They have a personal interest, I think, of investing in this area and show a little bit more social responsibility and philanthropy. This is really a drop in the bucket for them to serve DC area, because they really will be here in Virginia, right across the river. But you know, everything ripples. We are really all interconnected. So it's right across the river. So I just thought that maybe we could engage them in the distribution, for example, and even on the material, because I know they are still distributing. So I don't know, maybe they could even donate. It really would be for a small amount. I mean, we are really talking like a speck of sand, speck of dust for them. If we have a plan in place that is not scattered and they know that we are not going to be asking more and more and more and more, right? If we just do, look, let's just say that we are close to the end of the semester, to mid-June, mid-summer, we would need this amount of material that we would need for this many. Well, I don't know who has the data, so we would need to have a little bit of data that it would be of who would be these families that are in need of this, and maybe they are interested in partnering up with the arts organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and I think I wish we could figure out a way to engage the tech companies a little bit more. I know Comcast has been working with DCPS, and they're going to set something up where families that don't have access to the internet in the DCPS school system will be able to get Comcast for 2 months for free. So I think that is a really good example of a tech company stepping up to the plate. But I think, yeah, figuring out maybe a more formalized plan of, is there a way we can engage these tech companies, and if there's a way that, you know, a laptop company could be able to distribute, you know, Chromebooks to DC students, or, you know, someone mentioned working with Apple, trying to figure out if there's going to be a way to engage these tech companies, because ultimately you're right, like for them and their bottom line, it probably wouldn't be that expensive for them, and it would be good PR if that's all they care about. If that is all they care about, at the very least, it would be good PR for them. So I think that might be a good idea to come up with. Maybe do some research about tech companies that do have a history of philanthropy and being generous, and maybe seeing if there's a way we can, as a community, start to ask for some of these resources.
You also have big organizations, you know, they donate. Of course, these are not the most up-to-date material, but this is, compared to what we have, it is very advanced material, like the international organizations around town, like the World Bank, the OAS, the IMF, the Inter-American Development Bank. They have a huge pool of materials and computers and things of that sort that they, when they switch to the most up-to-date equipment, they donate all of that. So I don't know where everybody is with that, and they don't do it all at once. I think they do it by department, and the departments have a certain budget and a certain amount. Nevertheless, that would be already some material that could be donated. We could reach out to them as well. And they are all, in a sense, philanthropic. They are all working with development. So I'll put here.
These are great ideas. Also, we can talk to one of our board members, Kent Withicum, is heads up education for Washington Lawyers Committee, and they do a lot of equity and social justice education work, and have been working a lot with Microsoft too. So there could be some connections already built in there as well, and Microsoft's just, you know, a stone's throw away from the district where their operations are headed out. And we know that they've already been engaged in a lot of arts education learning through our friends at Wolf Trap and others. But in terms of physical hardware, I think the World Bank IMF idea is a great one. The challenge just is distribution, who's physically working, where are, are they even, that all of that stuff may be stockpiled right now, but with no one to distribute it. It might be easier for a larger corporation that already has the material to get that out. But as a future idea, I do like that idea. Yeah, Amazon indeed is probably making a lot of money during this crisis. They're in such demand right now, that's for sure. Sorry, passing the mic back.
So I think we are doing a really good job sort of brainstorming about the technology divide. I wanted to circle back to see if anyone has any suggestions for teachers who have students with special needs, and if there's any resources that you all are aware of, or maybe just any challenges, just opening the floor to focus a little bit more about this accessibility issue, because I think a lot of the times special education classrooms are often not always thought about. So I just wanted to loop back in to see if anyone had any experience working with special education students in this time, or any concerns or any resources that you might be aware of to help support our educators, since that also is a huge need that they've been asking for.
Mm-hmm. If I may, again, I'm so sorry. I'll take 2 minutes of floor time again. Special education is also so amazingly broad. There is not one definition. And I would imagine that teachers and parents are here talking about all the way from your social and emotional difficulties all the way to the physical disability. So it's, and many of them combined. I would say that for that, it would be almost important to engage the people who are the experts, even if we are creating artistic strategies of sorts. But I know that they aren't many, they are less than 60, I think, psychologists and maybe, therapists and things of that sort from DCPS and maybe even from our charter schools, to guide us, create maybe a partnership and a collaboration that they can guide us in some ways that we can create content for the special needs. But I find that it needs vetting, that kind of work that we would do. And I think from the parents that I've contacted also, that has been the group that feels the most, lost without proper resources. But I find we really need to reach out to the experts on that.
Thanks,
for several reasons, for legal reasons also.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, you bring up a good point in that, we may not be experts in this field. And so a lot of that is, if we're talking about the work of an equity and access community, is acknowledging if we don't know, acknowledging that we might not be the experts on that situation. Lissa or Tracey, do we have any contacts with DCPS who work specifically with special education students, like at central office? I don't know if there's like a governing department that oversees. We don't think so? Okay.
Yeah, we can ask, we do those, our Friday 10 o'clocks, but we can follow up with emails for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe that might also be a next step. I think Stephanie has a question or wants to say something.
We actually have a lot of special ed groups into AFI, and one problem that we've had in developing materials for them is that they're just so incredibly diverse. And I think that one thing that might be helpful is just to have a variety of things available for teachers to draw from and possibly customize for their students. Because even what we do provide for them, they often have to change it somehow, for their students. So they'll, a lot of times the students will have problems processing language. So there'll be materials with little pictures, or, they use stickers instead of writing, and the kinds of discussion questions that are helpful, I'm still in the process of figuring out. But what we do at AFI is very customized to each grade level and ability level and discipline. Like it's really customized for each group. So I'm feeling especially like it's hard to, you know, to do what I do in this format. But I mean, one thing that I've found is that there's just unbelievable variety. It really has to be class by class and teacher by teacher.
We could also reach out to some other organizations and see, just to ask how they are doing. So for example, Autism Speaks. And I know they deal with children, of course, the focused children that are within the spectrum, but so many of those children have also several other disabilities, including physical disabilities. So maybe they do have some data or something that they can just guide us. Maybe we should reach out. Yeah, this will connect a lot of people that normally wouldn't together. Yeah.
I want to just emphasize Mandy's comment in the chat too, talking about start thinking of how to engage with parents of students with special needs. Clarissa referenced this earlier, that the collaborative is will start to host like parent-focused like virtual convenings. So this definitely could be a topic within that. I just really liked your idea. Mandy, do you want to expand upon that at all?
Hi. Sure, yeah. I was just thinking about the challenges that all parents are having right now, and working through homes, kind of being that person there and trying to get their kids to focus on assignments or online learning, and particularly parents with children with special needs might need. You had mentioned earlier that teachers aren't looking for professional development because they're so focused on their students, but I wonder how parents might benefit from even just simple instruction on how to use certain resources or how to adapt resources if organizations aren't going to be, if we can't be responsive enough to address all of those various needs. And maybe there are, within organizations, there may be individuals who are more specialized in that could provide that kind of support or training for parents.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
We also have a couple of really active special education teachers who were super active in the field trip program. So maybe I can reach out to them as well to see if they have any resources. A couple of those teachers have been sharing some resources with me as they've discovered them, but I think I might check in and just, it might be helpful to try and have a conversation with a few of those special education teachers to see what they've been hearing specifically and their specific challenges. So I think that would probably be a next step for me to report back for the next meeting.
That's perfect. We can make sure that we'll follow up with that. And just to echo what I'm seeing in the chat and what we've just discussed, love the idea of a parent PD. I think that's really fantastic. That ties in well with what we've been thinking about for parent engagement too. Some really great ideas are coming out of today's conversation, so I appreciate you all. This has been great.
Hi, can I talk? There are a lot of legal ramifications also. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes. Especially to those students that have one-on-one dedicated aides. That's federal, those are federally mandated. And so those parents are in a position to request that somehow their federal mandate has been upheld for the education for their students. Some of those students are very, very vulnerable. you know, just getting your child dressed who's in a wheelchair and might have, you know, need oxygen and things like that can take you 2 hours to get your child dressed. And I really liked what I think it was Sylvia that said that the differences in special needs are so wide that really, instead of us having a parent PD, we need to ask the parents what they need. And they're the best ones to be able to tell us, this is what I need. I need, you know, 2 hours to work myself. I need someone to engage with them one-on-one with a, you know, a Zoom chat. I need, I really do think they're the ones to help. And for, I know DCPS right now, those one-on-one aides have no health insurance, and they're out of work. You know, they are not being paid throughout. So, thank you, everyone. I love these ideas, and I'm so proud of Washington. I'm so proud that people are really do care about these issues and are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the conversation that we're having too. I think we're doing a really good job of addressing what we don't know and what we can improve, and coming up with different ideas to engage our community. I think it would be a good idea to have a couple of special education teachers join our daily Zoom chats, and maybe that could be a time where they could then invite the parents to join the Zoom chats as well. Maybe, you know, hopefully we could have parents and teachers on that conversation. But I think, you know, everyone's right in that special education is so broad. There's so many, you know, different needs and abilities out there, and lumping it together as one can be problematic because there's so many different areas that need to be addressed. So I think this would be a really good time to hear from the experts, to hear from the people that are actually living this, experiencing this. And then from there, we can take that feedback back to our members and figure out a game plan of what we can do. But first, we really need to figure out what is happening, what is going on the ground level. Yeah. So I think this is a really good place to stop. We do have a hard stop at 12. If anyone has any last comments, definitely feel free to share out. But otherwise, thank you all for joining this conversation. And I think we're having these weekly. So thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to talking to you all next week and seeing how we can really work together to improve these equity issues and barriers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job, Clarissa.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Awesome job, Clarissa. That was so good.
Yeah. I have to sign off. I think everyone will be kicked off after I end the meeting. I have my therapy appointment now, my teletherapy. So Clarissa, you said you had it at 12 o'clock. You can sign in on the Zoom account.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, we'll do.
All
right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.